Verbier, and welcome back to the people that tuned into our live stream across the globe as well. On behalf of the Board of Directors, the principals and the entire summit team, I wish you a very warm welcome to the second day of the talks program of the Verbier Art Summit. My name is Anneliek Sijbrandij and I'm the founder of the Verbier Art Summit, and we are extremely excited to provide you with new ideas and inspiration on our important social and ecological topic, resource hungry, our cultured planet and its ecological impact. The Verbier Art Summit is an international platform for discourse in a non-transactional setting. There's nothing to buy, nothing to sell, not that much art to look at apart from our cultural partners. The summit connects thought leaders to key figures in the art world, to generate innovative ideas, and to drive social change. We truly hope that the inspiration you will get from this afternoon's talks program will be shared with the wider art world and beyond, please, and use our hashtag Verbier Art Summit. We also hope that attending students will spread the word and that we will have many more of you back next year. The summit will take place at the end of January again. They painted the mountains white. Together, we can achieve real change. Our speakers will educate, provoke, and inspire you. But real social change is only achieved if we nurture these ideas and put them into action into our local communities. I keep repeating this message. With an urgent theme like resource hungry, it's important to look at our individual improvements, which is something that was also explored with Julie's bicycle yesterday. What qualities can art and culture bring to climate and environmental action? Where can we be most effective in creating positive and lasting change? Please keep these two questions in mind when you hear the presentation of our speakers. Art can make a difference. We thank our institutional sponsors and our international partners and all of our members for their ongoing support. We wholeheartedly thank our principals and our founding members, without whom the summit could never take place. We thank especially the Commune de Bagnes, the Office du Tourisme and Verbier Promotion, La Prairie, the Loterie Romande and the Canton du Valais. We are also very thankful to our important partner, the SDC, the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, who enabled the summit to bring international guests and who ensure that we continue our mission of driving social change. We also very much thank the W Hotel for their ongoing support in creating this massive event with us. Our cultural and institutional partners, Het Genève, UNHCR, Deste, Fondation Jan Michalski, Julie's Bicycle, the Centre d'Art Contemporain Genève, the Verbier 3D Foundation, and the Verbier Festival for being part of this year's program. Jessica, obviously, I thank you very much for all the time you took to co-create the 2020 Verbier Art Summit, inviting so many inspirational thinkers to Verbier. I cannot wait to hear what our speakers have to say this afternoon. So I'm very happy to hand over to Jessica and obviously to all of these inspirational thinkers that came to Verbier. And Jessica, the floor is yours. Oh, yes, you're fine.
That'll work. Thank you, Anneliek. And wonderful to be starting day 2 together. I thought I actually wanted to begin just to say a few words. Some of us have been meeting in the mornings and having discussion groups and sort of revisiting some of the conversations that took place yesterday afternoon, but also sort of extending that conversation in different directions. And we've had some amazing moderators. I'm incredibly grateful to Beatrix Roof, Daphne Ayas, Andrea Lissoni, and Vasilis Economopoulos for taking this on. They've been amazing kind of conveners of your conversations. And we tried to have a quick recap. I wanted to share some of the thoughts that came out of these conversations. I think, moving on from the conversation yesterday that was really focusing through design, through architecture, through art, but also through philosophy, and in particular feminism, we were discussing the different ways in which resources have to be understood as divergent according to context, but also the spaces, places, and people that we need to learn from that we have not necessarily, particularly in the West, given space and thought to, the indigenous communities that we can learn so much from, that we heard in particular from Adrian and from Djamila yesterday in their fantastic presentations. And I think it led to a lot of conversations about different ways in which we can think about our relationship to the world, not to see this sort of dramatic division between human life, animal life, biological life, material life, that part of our challenge is to learn from these different cultures and begin to think about a more complex relationship between forms. I keep coming back to what Djamila said about Afro-Brazilian culture and the notion of polluting the water is part of you. You are the water. Therefore, if you're polluting the water, you're polluting yourself. How do we become more sensitized to this this of the natural environment around us? Certainly in the conversation I had this morning, a lot of the discussion was about how do we think about pedagogy in this realm? How do we make sure that children are still having this relationship, this proximity, let's say. Proximity was a word that came up a lot in our conversation, proximity to others as part of our learning, that we will never really understand situations if we don't make ourselves proximus. How do we open ourselves up to other situations and other cultures, other realities? But also how do we make sure that a new generation of people are maintaining that connection with natural life? Certainly living in Manhattan, it's a challenge. We talked about optimism and pessimism. I think that one of the sort of strands of thought was, of course, it's overwhelming to think about many of the questions that we're dealing with right now. How do we retain some kind of optimism within this discourse as well, not feel completely futile? I think brought it back again to this idea of proximity. How do we make it something that we relate to, that's tangible, that's visceral in our own lives and the lives of others around us? We talked about support for artists and thinking about how do we continue generations of artists working in communities that are not necessarily in centers? How can we think about the ways in which we can act as patrons, supporters, enthusiasts, educators for a generation of artists who need that support, who wouldn't be able to do the work? Joan talked of the support that she received for the piece that we've seen and talked about over the last 2 days, how important that was for realizing that project that enabled her to come together with biologists, with other speakers, with a different generation of people as well. I think I can only touch on a few of these ideas, and I know that we're going to be hearing, I'm sure, echoes in the conversations that we have today. We have a great group of people with us today, and I'm excited to introduce all of them. Briefly, first coming up will be Andrea Bowers. Andrea's work has touched on so many of these themes that we'll be addressing and have been addressing over the last days, whether it's climate crisis, an incredible focus on communities who've been affected in a very direct way by stress in their environment, but also indigenous culture. And I think she's going to talk a bit about a very moving, incredible film that she made recently with an amazing young activist called Tokata Iron Eyes. We have Dorothea von Hantelmann with us from Berlin, who is the professor of art and society. I still love that title, Dorothea. Bard College in Berlin. Dorothea's done a great deal of work thinking about something else that's come up in our conversations about our sort of separation from objects, particularly in a museum environment. We've kind of created these incredibly sterile environments to show art in by and large, and how do we think about ways in which we become reconnected to the things that we're seeing? What is this distance, and how has it established itself, particularly in the West again, and how do we think about strategies for changing that, and what are the ways of approaching art, experiencing art be that we can learn from and continue to grow into? Elvira Dyangani Ose, who's the director of the showroom in London. Elvira, I think, has set an incredible example in her practice of working in a discursive manner, thinking about a sort of lessening of resources and the way in which we can have a powerful cultural impact through conversation, through coming together, through convening. Elvira is going to talk about her practice, I hope, and all the remarkable projects she's done in the last years. Christina Davis is here from the UNHCR, as Anneliek was mentioning, and we'll be in conversation with Daniel Marcelli from the SDC, and we're really hoping to hear the concrete work that you're doing, very much in a sort of active space of policy and real realpolitik, I think something we've sort of struggled to understand how we can affect change in a really substantive way in these conversations. So good to hear about how that is manifesting itself through your work. Stefan Kaegi is with us, one of the founders of Rimini Protocol, a very important provocateur, dramaturge, somebody who's established this theatre group in Berlin, colleagues, some years ago, and has, through their activity, which is often a very immersive and inclusive one, using you yourselves as the active participants in the work. Stefan's going to speak, I think, to some of the projects that they've produced that relate specifically to climate issues, but also to practices that, ways in which I think as artists we can begin to think about changing our practices in order to address the concerns within our own disciplines. How can we change? What are the ways in which we can quite literally affect change within our own disciplines and institutions? Catherine Bottrill, who some of you heard yesterday from Julie's Bicycle, will be helping us wrap up the day today. We'll be having a conversation between all of the afternoon's panelists to think, again, in concrete terms about how we can share ideas, pathways, steps forward in a way that I hope we'll all be able to leave with at least one thing that we can do better or change in our own environment. So thank you, and I'm going to hand over to Andrea.